Well, look, nothing lasts forever, I guess, is the theme of this segment, right? And I guess that has to bring us to an in-division rival that is making a massive change. I didn't think that Pete Carroll was going to be stepping aside or being asked to step aside, as apparently kind of what happened up in Seattle. I thought that their season was pretty good considering all the moving parts around their season, an injury to their starting quarterback. You know, they were in Drew Lock time there, and I thought that they had some decent success with Drew Lock going in for Geno. I thought that the Seahawks were good. Like, they weren't bad. And I'm surprised that it's amazing to say Pete Carroll's a 70-year-old man. He looks so good still. He's just got that California boyish, presentation about him. But Pete
went
Carroll,
to Redwood High School. He's a Marin guy from Larkspur, or Marin. Redwood's in Larkspur.
Pete Carroll's gone. I mean, in the same week where Bill Belichick and Nick Saban exit, and you can't find bigger football exits than that. It feels like Pete Carroll got a little short shrift in terms of any sort of waxing poetic about who he's been, what he's meant, not just to Seattle, but to the sport of football in its entirety, going back to his head coaching days at USC, the rising like a phoenix from the disaster that was the New England Patriots head coach for a minute, who was the New York Jets head coach for a minute. I mean, Pete Carroll, when he got to USC, was an NFL laughingstock. And for him to have come back from USC, he exited right at the right time, right when the sirens were getting there to, throw USC into college football's, temporary jail. He shows up in Seattle. A lot of eye rolling was attached to, Pete might have been good at USC, but back in the NFL, he's going to get embarrassed again. Well, he embarrassed more teams than he was embarrassed. He and Russell Wilson together were one of the all-time thorns in the side of the San Francisco 49ers, and presiding over the Legion of Boom. He had an era. He might have only had one Super Bowl, but for an era there, the Seahawks, were the best looking, best dressed girl in the high school. They were a monster. They really were. So, all you can do is say cheers to Pete Carroll, who was a hell of an opponent. I mean, that guy gave the Niners everything they wanted and then some.
He started as a GA at UOP in 1973. I was 3 years old. He's been doing it forever. What can you say? Isn't it amazing if you look at it? I don't know if I would agree with your laughing stock, because the Niners, he was a respected defensive coordinator with the Niners in the mid 90s, but he hadn't been. It's amazing that he had not been successful as an NFL head coach.
He had that good assistant, not a head guy. He
was thought to be too nice. He was thought to be too nice.
Not a leader of men is one thing I heard attached to him. And that's why he'll have success maybe in college, because those are the boys. But when he gets in front of men, no, it's not going to happen. Well, it happened.
And he picked the right general manager, John Schneider, and those two guys were locked at the hip. And yeah, I mean, Pete's two most successful runs were USC's head coach. He totally rejuvenated that entire program. And then what he did in Seattle, and he should have won 2 rings. He only won 1. We all know how it happened, but this guy's a Hall of Famer, man. He's won a national championship on the college level. He's won a Super Bowl on the pro level. He's been the coach of the year. He won the Pac-12 7 times. So yeah, I mean, incredible record. 170 and 120 and 1 as a head coach in the NFL. Only 500 in the playoffs, 11 and 11. 83 and 19 in college, won 81% of his games. And all I would say is this is the right time. And, some of these guys are such lifers that they almost have to have somebody kick them to the next stage of their life. You're 72 years old. Unless you know something I don't know, you don't got a lot of time left. And, he probably – whatever, you made a lot of money. You've been, football hours are long and arduous. And I realize it's your chosen profession and this is what you love to do. And I get it. But, you're talking about go do something else. I mean, he's got a wife, he's got 3 children, he's probably got some grandchildren. Go enjoy them. You're 72. Travel the globe. Do some philanthropic things. Do whatever your second interest is. But I will say this too. He also had a great coaching tree when you really look at it. He worked under some amazing coaches, George Seifert, Jerry Burns, Bud Grant, Kay Stevenson, who I worked for in the Canadian League, Monty Kiffin, Lou Holtz. But he also, 15 of his assistants became NFL or NCAA head coaches, guys like Ed Orgeron, Lane Kiffin, Bo Pelini, Sarkisian, Norm Chow, Gus Bradley, Dan Quinn, Robert Saleh, and a lot of his guys who worked with him became executives, became GMs in the NFL. Charlie Army, Jason Licht, who's now in Tampa, Scott McLuhan, Chris Greer, Scott Fitterer, who just got dumped by the Panthers. So he's had a pretty good, not pretty good. He's had a Hall of Fame coaching career. He's a great guy. He's a positive guy, and a Bay Area son. And I wish him well. And he's going to stay in Seattle as a consultant.
That's the thing. And he's not leaving. Like, this guy isn't in line for another head coaching job. I think he's reached that point in his life where he is like, all right, I'm 70. And I think that the plan was
they're going to go Dan Quinn here. I think.
Yeah, I think the plan was he was going to come back, but then you sleep on it for a night or two. You talk, you realize, do I really want to do another year? Do I want to commit? And he's like, I want to stay around football, but maybe not as the head coach of the Seahawks. So he's going to get kicked upstairs and be given a golden parachute, but still be involved, I'm sure, in some way. Still going to go through at least a stick of gum every 15 minutes. Pete can't give that up. But look, a truly worthy opponent. Like, that's what made the Seahawks and the 49ers such a great rivalry, because they were worthy opponents against each other. Even when the Niners were getting their ears boxed in by the Seahawks, they were still pretty damn good, So it was he's one of those. He was the bad guy, but he was a pretty good guy for being a bad guy. So
what's your deal?
Yeah,
him and Harbaugh. What's your deal? That was great.
Cheers,
now Pete's
cheers to Pete Carroll. Cheers to Pete Carroll.
Yeah, cheers to Pete Carroll, and good guy. And I wish him well. I do believe Dan Quinn will take over that job in Seattle. They'll have continuity with their defense, because Quinn will come in and run that same scheme. John Schneider is still a very young man in the GM circles, and let's be honest, Schneider's done a really nice job at restocking the cupboard. I mean,
they got a lot of good young pieces. A lot.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, and they looked like they were going to be on the outs for a while. And he gets Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas in one draft. Then he gets Devin Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen, and they signed Julian Love, who's a tremendous player. It's like they rebuilt their secondary. They're close to having the Legion of Boom back there. They're not quite what they want to be up front, and they obviously need their quarterback of the future, and maybe it's Michael Penix. Who knows? Maybe it's Bo Nix. My guess is it's one of those two guys. There's two quarterbacks in this draft, both coming out of the Pacific Northwest, and I think Seattle's going to wind up getting one of them.
Larry, how high were you when you were like, if the Niners don't get it done this year, they should call Bill Belichick and see if he wants to be the defensive coordinator? Are you out of your mind?
No. I mean, first of all, everybody just immediately is, and I get it. You say things and people are like, dude, that's a terrible take. Well, we don't know what Belichick. Wait a second. We don't know what Belichick wants to do. The assumption is that he wants that record that Don Shula has. But you know what, Damon? I'm not convinced that that's the case at all. And the people that I've talked to, and I've talked to multiple national people around the league who know what's going on, said that Bill's not going to coach again, and that Bill's not going to be a GM, that Bill's going to be kind of a defensive consultant, and that he's done with the coaching gig. I mean, we're talking about a 73-year-old man. Now, I know there's a lot of young football fans, so they don't know their football history, but Bill Walsh coached Stanford after he won 3 Super Bowls. Sid Gilman was a great, he's like the father of the forward pass. This guy was a star coach in the 50s with the Rams and the 60s with the Chargers. He was the Eagles quarterback coach in 1981. That's a major step down. Heck, I was just at Niners Ravens on Christmas night. I bumped into Ozzie Newsome. I shook hands with him, said, "Hey, how you doing, Ozzie?" Ozzie is not retired. Ozzie has kicked himself into a football consultant role. Eric DeCosta is the new GM in Baltimore. All I'm saying is, for the very, very best, for the very, very most respected football people, they can do lesser roles in the twilight. Especially, we're talking about a guy who's coached 50 years, who's almost 70, mid 70s. The assumption that Bill Belichick's going to be a coach, I think is it could happen, but and this idea that he could just have his pick of jobs, I don't think so, man. And the ones that are rumored to be he could be headed to are places like Atlanta and Carolina.
Yeah.
What does Bill Belichick really want? If he wants a fat check, go to Carolina. David Tepper will cut him a big check. But I get the feeling that he wants to get back to his roots, and he says he loves coaching. And I think that's what he wants to do. He's a defensive coach. He's a defensive backfield coach. And think about it this way. He's really tight with Kyle Shanahan. He's really tight with John Lynch. He likes those guys. That's how Jimmy Garoppolo got here for a second-round pick way back when. So all I'm saying is, if Bill Belichick just wants to be a defensive czar, if you're the Niners, let's just say you fall short here, what's the pivot? I mean, Shanahan's not going to blame himself. He's going to blame the defense. And Steve Wilkes could move on. And they could promote somebody like Daniel Bullocks to defensive coordinator who's pretty young. And they could pay a Bill Belichick big money to be their defensive replacement czar. Now, he's not going to be some grinder, but don't look at it as a demotion. It wouldn't be a demotion. It would be like he's working with with an offensive guru as the defensive guru to lead the next defensive coordinator. I know it sounds crazy now, and I know it's not. People are thinking, "Oh, he's going to lead his own ship. He's Bill Belichick," but Walsh did it. Sid Gilman did it. Ozzie Newsome did it. Belichick could do it. It's probably not going to happen, but I mean, where if you're Bill Belichick, would you rather? I mean, think about it this way. You also got to think about legacy. What if he goes to Carolina and they don't win anything? Now his legacy somewhat is tarnished. Yeah, he was done at the end. He couldn't get it done. What if he goes to Atlanta and they fail? He's already had this failure with New England. So Bill Belichick, the general manager, let down Bill Belichick, the head coach. Bill Belichick's defense, though, is still outstanding. And if you look at the 49ers, what do they have? They've got 5 or 6 young DBs that really could use a Bill Belichick.
I think I saw an incredible stat that over his 24-year career as head coach, they allowed 1.2 points per opponent drive, which is still like the best. Is the best certainly over a 24-year run. I mean, he is a spectacular X's and O's teacher of the game coach. But
at his core, he's the best. He's the best defensive back. His expertise was always in defensive backfield
secondary play. Absolutely.
Yeah, he's right there with George Seifert and Bud Carson as like the greatest DB coaches of all time.
Yeah,
and the Niners did for years and years and years they employed some older guys. I mean, Bill McPherson was coaching in his mid-70s. Now, was he the DC? No, Ray Rhodes was. But he was a defensive consultant, and I could see, and you could pay Belichick anything you want, by the way. So, like, if you're Bill Belichick, would you rather go fail in? He's got, the guy's already got 8 Super Bowl rings, 6 as a head coach, 2 as a defensive coach with the Giants under Parcells. What he truly loves at his core is coaching and coaching DBs. And I'm not saying he's going to be the Niner DB coach. And I don't even think he'd be necessarily the coordinator, but I could think they could pay him a fat amount of money to be a defensive consultant. And I could see it. Now, a lot of people can't see it. We'll see how it goes.
It's wishful thinking. I think it's a little bit of a pipe dream when a man is a handful of wins away from being the all-time winningest head coach. I don't think he's looking to be anything other than a head coach. Should he leave New England?
Seem like the kind of guy that wants that record, though. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, he doesn't seem like he's motivated by anything, because that's the camera facing Bill Belichick feels like he's detached, but he's very attached to the game. And, if you ask me, what do you think Nick Saban would do next? I'd tell you, well, he'll probably go like coach a high school or a Pop Warner team, just to be a teacher of the game in a much pressureless level. Like, I could see Bill Belichick doing that, or like, going to he's the next head coach of Amherst College or something, just something really off the radar.
He coached lacrosse at Amherst.
You're right.
No, I think I
think it's a massive pipe dream to think that he will show up to fix a Niner defense should that let it down. I just don't think he's anything other than a head coach at this point in his life cycle, and he's got one more coaching cycle in him, and I don't think he's going to carry anybody's bags. He wants to run the show.
We'll see. But you got to remember this: if the Niners fall short, there's going to be a ton of pressure to do something of significance to run it back, and it's not going to be a long-term play. It's going to be a short-term play. And Bill, there's no doubt he's the czar of defense, and Shanahan's not going to blame himself if they fall short. He's going to blame the defensive shortcomings, and I think that may align. But maybe I'm wrong. Tariq Ahmad, the director of college scouting, I think is a star within the Niners system. There's another star within the Niners system. His name's Josh Williams, and he's a national scout. He went to my high school, St. Ignatius High School. Josh is a tremendous guy. I think Josh is maybe a year or two early on becoming the new Adam Peters, but Josh would be a great candidate, and Tariq I could see being the call. So that would be my guess as far as replacement. And Mick Mallow here is right on the money. Shows how smart some of the people in our chat really are. Mick's all over it. Tariq Ahmad, he says, is taking Peters' place. Maybe he's got sources, but there's no doubt that Mick is right. Tariq is in line. He's next up. He was the director of college scouting.